All right. Time is now 11:30, and I see we have about 3 people watching. So we're going to begin this webinar as soon as I see that number just go up just a little bit more. I'm just waiting for some more chatter in the chat room on the right-hand side. So if you can just say hi in the chat room on the right-hand side and where you're from, it'll help us as far as taking attendance goes. And then I'll probably start in about a minute. Hello, Siobhan, and hello, Todd. All right, well, the time is 11:32, and I do see the numbers going up and down as far as watching goes, but I think usually that always kind of happens at the beginning of these webinars. So I'm just going to begin now. The beginning's kind of just a lot of fluff anyways, but with that, let's get started. So thank you first and foremost for joining us here today for the AirWatch webinar. Hopefully by the end of this webinar, you will have learned at least the precursors and the basics of how to work with AirWatch for managing your iPads at your school. So with that, let's jump right in. But before we begin, actually, sorry, some things I would just want to go over is that the webinar is being recorded. So if by the end of this webinar you still don't feel 100% confident or you didn't quite understand something that I said, you can always go back and watch it again using the same URL. So yes, Mr. Larder, it's safe to assume that this will be recorded. So anyone who can't make it today can use not only this link, but you can actually go to the channel that you're looking at right now, and you'll see all the previous ones. It's generally speaking the same content. Obviously, with the newer ones, we do kind of change it if something changes in AirWatch. But yeah, you can use these same videos, or rather the same channel, to go back and watch this particular webinar or previous ones. They do tend to run, hopefully, I'm trying to keep it into an hour, but sometimes it runs a little bit longer. So if you can't make it all the way to the end, don't worry about it. It will be recorded, and you can actually come back and jump through the video to the part where you missed. Another thing to note is that there is about a 10-second delay by the time that you guys hear my voice and by the time actually as I'm saying it. So I'll say something and then 10 seconds later you're hearing it. So if you say something in response to what I'm saying in the chat and I don't quite catch it right away, I have my buddy Felipe here who's kind of fielding the chat room and watching over any questions. He'll try to answer anything he can right away. And if something's more pressing, we may take it to the end where there's a questions period. But if I do need to interject, I will interject to answer your question, hopefully. Also, feel free to ask as many questions as you want in the chat. I also actually have some new people here that are actually going to be sitting and joining me next to me. So just welcome, guys. So hey, you guys can't see them. Just bear with me 1 second. Sorry. All right, sorry about that. Hi, Tina. So before we begin, one thing I want you to note is that this YouTube channel quality can be adjusted in the bottom right-hand corner using the little gear icon. If you hover your mouse over the video, you'll see a little gear icon, and if you click that, you'll be able to adjust the quality from something like 480p to anywhere from 144p all the way to 1080p. What that means is that it's just the higher quality of the video. If you increase the quality of the video, the image will be clearer, but if you decrease it, it'll be faster. So depending on where your network speed is, and if you're having any problems, you may want to consider adjusting that. Also, if you do notice that on the bottom channel, by the YouTube video bar at the bottom, you'll see that there next to the volume button is a little live button. If you see that that button is gray, if you just click that button, it'll turn red, and that'll indicate to you that you're on the quote-unquote livest possible version of the video. Again, still bearing in mind that there's about a 10-second delay. There are some prerequisites here. I mean, they're not set in stone, but we do hope that by this point, if you do have the AirWatch webinar invitation, then you should also have access to AirWatch. If you don't have access, or if you would like to grant access to somebody else at your school in AirWatch, this can actually be done by your principal through LAS. And if you're not familiar, LAS is a shortcut on the desktop. We're hoping at least also that you have at least one device enrolled in AirWatch. And lastly, there are some links in the video description to our CSD knowledge base. So that is one thing to note. Alright, so what is AirWatch? So AirWatch is a mobile device management system, or you can use the term enterprise mobility management system interchangeably. Don't worry about which one you want to use, it doesn't matter. The idea is that they both do the same thing. It's a place for all of our mobile devices to come into a central point and talk to AirWatch, and we can push out different configurations or different apps. The idea is that, you know, rather than going on to each individual iPad and doing something, you could do it from one central point, which is AirWatch, and I'll show you how that's done as the webinar progresses. So what are the benefits of AirWatch? The benefits of AirWatch is that there is automatic TDSB wireless network access. They'll connect to the WLAN, which is WLAN TDSB 01. Hi, Rosa. They will connect to WLAN TDSB 01. As before, what they used to do is they used to connect to TDSB Wi-Fi, and when you had to connect to TDSB Wi-Fi, it would prompt you to type in your employee number and password. So that's no longer required because, you know, passwords expire and it causes some other problems like that. You can also install applications from AirWatch, so rather than going onto each individual iPad, firing up the App Store, finding the app that I want, hitting the download button, you can actually push out all your apps from this central point to all those iPads. This also does, because we can push out apps that way, we don't need that Apple ID. So all the schools were given Apple IDs. It would be like number dash mobileg at tdsb.on.ca. We don't need those Apple IDs anymore with AirWatch because AirWatch is now the sort of like the controller that pushes out the apps. So that's another bonus. You don't have to remember that password. There's also a consistent experience between the iPads. You'll see that all the iPads sort of look the same. They all have the same blue background and the TDSB logo on the lock screen. So I have an iPad here with me, and you can actually see here's an iPad that's in AirWatch. You can notice that it has the blue background with the TDSB logo. So there's more of a consistent look and feel across the TDSB about how they're all going to look. There's also built-in security policies, which I'll get to. It sort of prevents students from adding apps and removing apps, or more annoyingly, what they used to do is put passcodes on the device and then not tell their teacher what the passcode was. So you would pick up an iPad and it would ask you to log in with like a 4-digit number. But obviously, you know, if the student would tell you what it was, you wouldn't be able to get into that iPad. So that's actually no longer possible with these AirWatch iPads. And last benefit, of course, is that it does give you sort of like an inventory of your iPad. So you'll be able to see them all in a list, which you'll see very shortly. Oops. So right now, who can log into the AirWatch console? Hopefully all of you. We did do a preliminary check to make sure that if you got this invitation, that you do have access to AirWatch. So you should be able to follow along when I eventually do load up the link, and you can actually log in and see what yours looks like so far. But all principals by default have access to log in, and AirWatch administrators, which from the previous slide, you know, your principal can make you an AirWatch administrator in LAS. I'm not going to cover that. It's not very interesting. And if anyone does have any questions regarding that, please feel free to send us an email or call us at the client service desk, and we'll be glad to provide you those instructions or show you. But say hypothetically your principal does add you in to adds you to the AirWatch administrators group in LAS, it could take 12 to 24 hours from that point before you actually have access. So this demo is going to cover the iPad's new look and feel, as you briefly saw. We're going to show how to navigate the AirWatch web console, and we're going to show you how to organize your iPads into what the product calls smart groups. And then once they're in these groups, or smart groups rather, you could then add and apply apps to those smart groups. So effectively granting multiple iPads, the same number of apps or the same number of web clips, which you'll all see very shortly. But first and foremost, I kind of want to show you the device side of things just to show you what's changed. So I'm hoping you guys actually have an iPad with you that is currently in AirWatch. What this looks like, as you briefly saw before, is that they all actually now have the TDSB logo at the lock screen. So if you pick up an iPad and you see that TDSB logo as the backdrop, that's already a good indicator that this one has the AirWatch product on it. They all have the same blue background. And one thing, the more important thing I wanted to show you is the presence of two apps that really indicate that it's an AirWatch. So right now there's really only 2 pages of apps on this iPad. But the two that I want to show you are the Agent app right here and the Catalog app right there. So if you see an iPad that has the Agent app on it and the Catalog app on it, that generally indicates that that iPad is enrolled in AirWatch. So, and I'm going to go into the importance of the Agent app in just a moment. But one thing I want to show you is that if you look, there's no app store on this iPad. So if I wanted to push an app on this iPad, how would I do it? Well, that's what we're going to be going over with AirWatch. But the idea I want you to understand is that this iPad right now, we'll call it that it's in quote unquote student mode, in that right now you can imagine I might be a student holding this iPad. I cannot add any apps to this iPad because that app store doesn't exist. If I go into settings, that passcode I was referring to earlier, under settings on the left hand side, there used to be an option here that says passcode, and you could put like a passcode on this device. That option is gone as well. And again, that's because this iPad is in quote unquote student mode. We can actually undo everything. So let's say you're a teacher and you actually want to put a passcode on the device, or maybe perhaps you want to go into the App Store and perhaps download an app on this one particular iPad. You can still do that. And how we do this is we launch the Agent app over here. So right now it's got a whole bunch of restrictions on it. If we want to undo every single restriction on it, we launch the Agent app. What's going to happen is it's going to ask me for a username and password. Now, any TDSB staff member, it doesn't have to be just teachers or principals, any TDSB staff member, if you have an employee number and password, you can pick up this iPad, launch the Agent app, and it's going to prompt you for this username and password. And if you type in your employee number and password, it's actually going to unlock all those restrictions on the iPad. I'm going to just pull this away because it's not very good for me to be typing out my password on a webinar, as I've done so many times before. But if you give me 2 seconds, I'm going to type in my 500 character password here. Let's see if I can get that back in frame. All right, so I got my employee number and password all filled in there. And when I tap login, it's going to load and do its thing. But what's going to happen is once the screen, once it gets past this screen and it's actually logged in and you can see all the details of the iPad, success, perfect. At that point, all the restrictions on the iPad will be lifted. Of course, sometimes you get these prompts. What does it say? Allow app. Okay, well, agent would like to send you notifications. Sure, why not? Allow app and books assignment. Sure. Oh my God. Sorry, guys. 1 second. Oh, it jumped right to the App Store. Oh my God. Okay. All right. So I kind of went really fast there, but that was because there's a lot of notifications that come up when you first wipe an iPad and bring it in. Generally, they can all be either just hit continue or ignore or whatever. They weren't really important. But the idea is that after you've signed into the AirWatch agent, you should be greeted with this screen, and it basically just shows you some overview of the iPad. But once you've logged in, now when you hit the home button, you go back to look at your iPad. If I go back to this first page, you can see now that the App Store is available over there. So now I can go and install whatever app I want. And in fact, if I go into settings, there's a whole bunch more settings that are now available that weren't there before, such as the passcode right there. I think also like the wallpaper, something you can adjust. There's a bunch of settings in here. There is a list of restrictions available. I'd be able to, if you contact us at the client service desk, I'd tell you what is restricted when it's in student mode and when it's not. But for the most part, consider it completely unlocked now. So once I sign into that AirWatch agent, everything's open and available for me. But now when I go to give this back to a student, obviously I want to sign out so that the student can't come in here and start adding whatever apps on here that they want. So what I do is I swipe back to that AirWatch agent app there. And as you saw earlier, I had already signed in. There's a logout button right here. And if I tap that, it's going to ask me if I want to log out. I'm going to click yeah. And once I'm back at the login screen, I know that the agent is now signed out. So that would then put all the restrictions back on the iPad. So when I hit the home button now, it can take a few seconds. You can see the App Store is still there, but what will eventually happen is it'll pop. What's this prompt? Trash would like to assign apps and books to you. Cancel. There you go. So well, there's the App Store gone, and obviously if I go back into settings, those ones that were there before, like passcode, are gone again. So that was just a really quick thing I wanted to show you, because if you're ever very frustrated with AirWatch and you're wondering how do I get the App Store back, or I'm trying to deploy an app but it's taking too long, you can always undo every single restriction on AirWatch and use the App Store the old-fashioned way if you wish to do so. So that was the device side of things, and then we're actually going to jump right back into the console. So I just wanted to give you a little precursor of what the device looks like before we go into the console. But now I'm going to talk about the actual web console. This is where you go on your computer and you open up the link to AirWatch, which is actually right there at the bottom of this slide. There's a shortcut for it in the school shared folder, which I'll show you. But I just want to go over some details about the fact that you can log in anywhere on the web, not just within the TDSB. So if you need to access AirWatch, you don't have to be within the walls of the Toronto District School Board. It's actually all on the internet. I'm not sure why you'd want to log into it at home, but if you wanted to, you could. There's no browser limitation, so it doesn't matter if you're using Internet Explorer, the blue E that you see, Google Chrome, Mozilla Firefox. It shouldn't matter. Any browser should be able to log into this AirWatch web console. An important detail I wrote down on this third point here, it says username format. The reason I put that there is because it is important to note that when we do get to the web console, and I'll show you, is that you don't just type in your employee number and password. You got to type in TDSB / then your employee number. I'll show you in just a second. There's also going to be a 4-digit PIN code it asks you to create on login. I won't be able to show you that because I've already created mine. But when you go to log in, if this is the first time you're logging in, it will ask you to create a 4-digit PIN code. So the link is right here. It's kind of a mouthful, cn239.awmdm. I wouldn't expect you to remember that, so I'll just show you real quick where it is on your computer. So right now I have a Windows 10 desktop here. I'm just going to minimize that. And for us, we have these sort of fictitious schools because we're obviously not in a school. So my school here is called, I'm just going to turn this off so I can bring it over, LAS Test School. But on your computer, depending on what school you're in, it'll say, for the case example of Rosa Pereira, you're at Graysdale Public School. So if you were to minimize all your icons and you look at the desktop, you'll see a folder on there that says like Graysdale Public School. For me, it says LAS Test School because it's just a test school. But we've sort of created this folder to mimic what it is that you guys will see. So if I double click that, what I'll see is a bunch of shortcuts in here. You're probably already familiar with that. You'll see a teacher share. You might see the yearbook and some other links here. But we did put the AirWatch link right here. So that's one way to get to the AirWatch web console if you can't remember that mouthful of a login. So if you just double click that, it'll open up in your default browser to the AirWatch web console. So I'm not sure if you guys are all following along. You can do that now if you want. Just go to your shared folder on your desktop, double click the AirWatch icon, and you should be at least this far for the AirWatch console. Now I mentioned that the username is not just your employee number and password. It is very true. If I just try my employee number and password, it will not work. We actually need to put in TDSB / and then your employee number. That might be actually difficult to see. Let me see if I can zoom in. Oh, too much. There we go. So it's TDSB / not /. So the / is above the enter key, not the / to the left of the shift key. So TDSB / and then your employee number. I should also mention that the TDSB is not case sensitive, so you can do TDSB lowercase, or you can even TDSB. It doesn't matter. As long as you have TDSB and then / in your employee number, you should be able to log in. and then of course your current network password. So I'm just going to type mine in here. Once you have all that filled in, let me zoom out so it's a little bit more clear. Once that's all filled in, you should be able to click the login button. And mine jumps right ahead to the dashboard, but you're not going to see the dashboard if this is the first time you're logging in. What you actually might see is the end user license agreement would probably be the first thing. Let me just come back here. There we go. So you'll probably see the terms of agreement. Sorry, that's it. You can read it if you want. It's kind of boring, I can imagine. But you can go ahead and click accept. And then the second screen will ask you to create a 4-digit PIN code. Now this 4-digit PIN code is only used if you're going to be wiping devices. So say, for example, you wanted to wipe a device from the AirWatch web console. You can be able to do that. This has to be done on a desktop computer, right? And a laptop, but not on the AirWatch. There's no school folder on the iPad. Yes, so, okay, so yeah, you won't be able to, that's a good question. Tina, this needs to be done on a computer with a web browser. I mean, hypothetically, you could do it on the iPad itself. So right now, just to keep in mind, we're not dealing with the iPads here. So this iPad is talking to AirWatch. But the actual web console where you go to manage your iPad is you would access that on a computer. It could be a laptop. As long as your computer has an internet connection, then you should be able to get to that link. Of course, that link is in your school shared folder, and you can only get to your school shared folder if you're on a TDSB computer and logged in. So, yeah. So let's say, I mean, you could, in theory, you know, go into AirWatch on the iPad. Like you could type in CN239 and then manage all your iPads from an iPad. That's fine. But I would recommend you do it from a computer because it's going to be a lot easier. The group ID means that it is not enrolled properly, I believe. Yeah, she's getting it on the iPad. It says it's also asking for a group ID. So when you're saying it's asking for a group ID, what are you, it's not allowing you to log in. Okay, password not working. All right, so starting with Tina, the group ID usually suggests that if you're seeing something along the effect that the group ID, or it's asking you for a group ID, that usually means that the iPad is not enrolled properly. I'm gonna have Felipe go into your AirWatch environment and see if he can find that. Tina, if you want, if you know the serial number of that iPad, you can paste it in the chat, and then he can actually check out the details of that iPad. Now, Rosa, you're saying that it's not allowing you to get in with your password. This usually happens when you don't type in that TDSB / at the beginning. So all I could really recommend is that you try again. I'm going to have Felipe also check to see if you have access to AirWatch. We did try to make sure that everyone had access before you got invited to this webinar, so that you would be able to log in and follow. Yeah, she doesn't have access? Really? Okay, Rosa, yeah, it shows here that you don't have access. Would this be the first time that you're logging in? If anyone else doesn't have access, please let me know in the chat. Siobhan, the password is your current network password. So for example, when I go to check my email or when I log into a computer, I would usually use my employee number and whatever my current network password is. For AirWatch, the only difference between logging into AirWatch and logging into a computer is putting that TDSB / at the beginning and then typing in your password. So as long as you have TDSB / and hate to make the point any more clear, is the / part, right? So not / but /, so TDSB / and then your employee number, right? Sorry, TDSB / your employee number and then your current network password, so the same one you used to log in. If you type that all in and you get access denied, then more than likely it means you don't have access. which would be interesting to find out because everyone who was invited, we usually get a list, and we had everyone, you know, check to make sure that they all have access. So I'm gonna proceed along. Tina, I'm gonna have Felipe take a look at that iPad serial number just to make sure it's enrolled in AirWatch properly. Because sometimes when you launch the AirWatch agent, you do see that prompt for group ID. That's not what you should see. So like if you have an AirWatch iPad like this one, right? And you launch the agent app here and then it asks for a group ID, that usually means that it wasn't enrolled properly. Or perhaps that the I guess one thing I can ask is, Tina, is the background of that iPad that's saying group ID, is it blue? Because if it's not blue, then it might be that what happened is it's never been wiped since we got AirWatch, and somebody actually just went to the App Store and downloaded the AirWatch agent. Oh, Tina, the next step after clicking the school shared folder is you go to your AirWatch link. So you can imagine if this was your computer here, I would minimize. Here, I'll close that. Imagine this is the school shared folder. You double click that and go into the AirWatch link here. So Tina, you should see an AirWatch link on your school shared folder. So Rosa, I'm not sure. I mean, if Rosa doesn't have access, so Rosa, yeah, it looks like you don't have access, unfortunately. Um, yeah, we're gonna contact your principal as soon as this webinar is done, just to get you added in. I'm not sure if you want to stick around, because I mean, you could still watch and follow along, but we do this every month, so the next one you can go back, or sorry, the next one you can attend if you want to do it more live and interactive, or you can actually use this same link once we're done to go back and watch it and sort of follow along. So even though you don't have access now, you can always go back and take a look at this one, or you can come to the future ones. So we'll see where to go from there. But right now, I'm just going to move along just to be cognizant of everybody's time. So as I said, if you did manage to log in at this point, you probably got the terms of agreement, and then you had to create that 4-digit passcode. That 4-digit passcode, like I said, is only used to wipe the devices, which I'll show you hopefully near the end. If you don't remember the 4-digit passcode, we can always reset that. I'm not sure if you're seeing the chat. Siobhan saying that 2 other people don't have access. Nicole Hong and Joyce. If you don't have access, just just say something in the chat, and then Felipe is gonna move along with that. So right now you should be both logged in to the AirWatch console and logged into the, or not logged in, but have an iPad in front of you that's enrolled in AirWatch with the blue background. Rosa, the instructions to get you added in, it actually needs to be performed by your principal. So, or we can log a ticket for somebody else to do that. I'm going to just carry along here in case somebody else is sort of all caught up and I cannot log in either. Maybe I shouldn't move on until everyone's... Why isn't anyone able to log in? Miss VAP capital G, can you put your employee number in the chat, and then I can have Felipe check your access? Tina, Tina, were you able to get into the AirWatch console, the actual, like, this page here? Sorry, I don't like the dead air because I really want to. Unfortunately, there's a bit to cover. Okay. So he's gonna check if you have access, but if I haven't already made it clear, the big thing for logging into AirWatch is having that TDSB and then / your employee number, right? So as long as you have the TDSB / and then your employee number and password, and you already have access, you should be good to go. Okay, so Todd Larder's in. Beautiful. Thank God it's not just me. Like, oh God, no one has access. Perfect. Okay. So, Felipe is going to check your access. Felipe, just wave at me when you've confirmed that somebody does have access and still can't get in. Okay, so both Siobhan and Nicole don't have access. Crazy. What about Miss VAP capital G? All right. All right. Bear with me for a second. Unfortunately, there's no magic button we can press to give you access. But it is important to know that whether or not you have access or not, because if you have access and you can't get in, then it's more than likely that um, it's something permission related or wasn't done properly. No, she does not. What's her first name and last name? Okay, Tina's in. That's good. So two. Sorry, Velichka. Hopefully I'm not butchering your name. Uh, yeah. So okay. Yeah, Velichka, you don't have Velichka. Okay, perfect. Velichka, you don't have access to AirWatch apparently at this moment. I'm not sure if she was on the invitation list. Do you have that? She was. Was she flagged as having access? All right. My apologies, everybody. Velichka, apparently you do actually have access to the AirWatch web console. So again, I can. Oh, you do. Oh, perfect. Okay. All right. So 3 out of a bunch. All right. Oh, perfect. Okay. I'm not too sure. All right. Bearing all that in mind, 3 out of a bunch of people all be able to log into the AirWatch console. We're going to move along. Hello, Anna. Welcome to the AirWatch webinar. If this is the first time you're hearing this, suddenly I cannot get in. All I can really do is recommend that you just try with your employee number. Again, TDSB / your employee number and then your password once again. I'm going to have to move along at this point just so that all the content gets covered. So once you've logged into the AirWatch web console and you've accepted the terms of agreement, which obviously was this screen right here, and then you were prompted to create that 4-digit passcode, you can make it simple, 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, you're only going to use this when you go to wipe a device in AirWatch, which means like wiping it. When I say wipe, I mean like clearing it back to its factory settings. Um, I'll demonstrate that hopefully near the end because it's really not too important. But it does prompt you to type in your 4-digit PIN code before you wipe a device. The idea is that you don't wipe a device accidentally, so it's like a confirmation before you do it. So once you've gotten past the terms of agreement and creating that 4-digit PIN code, then you should see the dashboard, which is where I'm at now. So there's really not too much to spend as far as time goes right here on the dashboard. The dashboard, as it implies, is just sort of like a dashboard. It's got some pretty little graphs that show you, how many iPads do you have right now. In this case, I have 2 devices here in AirWatch. Kind of breaks down different statistics on them. Like last seen, when it says last seen, it means when did the device come in and actually say hi to AirWatch, as in connected to the network, being able to communicate with AirWatch. So you got some graphs here, just kind of giving you breakdown of your iPads here. It can be useful, let's say if you were to try to see like how many iPads have not been connected in how long. So this chart right here shows me that I have, 2 devices that have been last seen or checked in rather in 0 to 3 days. But you can imagine if one has been offline in greater than 31 days down here, then you could actually click that bar and it will take you and show you what those 31 devices is it's referring to. Kind of gives you a breakdown, also different platforms. So right now we predominantly deal with iPads, but we're introducing Samsung Android devices. So you might see some Samsung Android devices if you guys have purchased those. Just a graphical overview of the environment. The more important thing, though, than the dashboard is this list view. So if you look on the left-hand side, we actually have 4 primary toggle buttons. We're going to go through this one, devices, apps and books, groups and settings. Devices is the default when you first log in, and then it shows you from the devices, it shows you the dashboard. So I'm actually going to move over to list view because what that'll do is it'll show me a list of my devices. So if I toggle list view here, it's going to give me a breakdown of all the different devices that I have in my environment. In this case, I only have 2. The one that you see here at the top in green, let me see if I can zoom in a bit. Maybe it's too much. All right. This one right here on the top is the iPad that I have to the left of me. the one that I've already showed. This one is actually gone. I've removed it, but it's still appearing there. But so we'll just pretend it's not there. But for the most part, you can see that this one with the long cryptic name is one of the iPads that I have with me, and I'm going to actually briefly show you how this iPad got in here. So when I'm looking at the list view, I can see all the different iPads that I have in my environment. It kind of also gives you a breakdown of the device details. So right now it has a long cryptic name. I'm going to rename that in a few moments. But first and foremost, it also shows you the platform. So what version of iOS it's running and what kind of hardware it is. Just some general details about the device itself. But how do these devices actually get in here? Like, let's say I actually have 100. Why do I only have 2 showing here? So this is the part that we call enrollment. So if you want an iPad to show up in your AirWatch environment, this is all done after you wipe a device and it comes back to life. And I'm going to show you just real quickly how that works. So this iPad is already in AirWatch. So this iPad is the one that you saw back on that screen here, that green one. This one is that one right here. Oh wait, you can't see my mouse. Right here. So I hope that's clear. But now I want to put another device in my AirWatch environment. So I'm going to move this one out of the way. I have another one here that's been wiped. So this is a vanilla iPad. You can imagine that it is either brand new or it used to be in AirWatch, and I've wiped it now. So it's basically on the default factory setup. So when you first launch an iPad, it's got this sort of little wizard that you walk through. So this is a brand new iPad, let's pretend. I just got it, and now I want to put it in AirWatch. I want this iPad that I have here to show up in my environment so I can start working with it in AirWatch. So how this gets here is during this initial setup. So you just kind of follow the default values. Obviously, I'm going to choose English and then Canada, and then it's going to say quick start, blah, blah, blah. Oh, there's a little button down here. You can't see it, so set up manually. It's going to ask me to join the Wi-Fi. All the TDSB iPads should be able to join TDSB media devices without a username and password. If you can't join TDSB media devices, then you can actually use TDSB Wi-Fi. And TDSB what? It's happening again, Felipe. TDSB Wi-Fi will ask you for your employee number and password or your username and password, but you should be able to join TDSB media devices. This one's been finicky all morning, and I was worried that this was going to happen. I'm trying to get it to join. Yeah, so this one's not letting me join TDSB media devices, so now I'm actually going to try, TDSB Wi-Fi. Come on. That's fine. TDSB Wi-Fi. So I'm going to put in my employee number and password again off screen so you can't see what I'm typing in. So I got in my employee number and my password there to join the Wi-Fi. I'm hoping this works. Oh my. Bear with me. Every time I do a webinar, something always goes wrong. I tried both. Yeah, I know it did last time. Alright, I'm going to restart this and show you again. Okay, so I'll show you in a moment as soon as that comes back to life here. But that's the general premise I want to make clear, is that during that initial setup, there's a part where it asks you for a username and password, and when you type in your school's 4-digit trillium number, it'll then appear in the AirWatch console here. So hopefully I can demonstrate that if this thing works. So I'm just firing it back up again. But going back to list view, you can see here that it just kind of shows you all the different details of the iPad. This would actually be a good time now to show you that I can rename the device. So say, for example, this iPad right here has a very long and cryptic name that's not very meaningful to me. I can rename this iPad right here from the web console by clicking this little pencil next to the icon. And what I want to do is take out this crazy long name that means nothing to me, and I want to name it something like something that's meaningful to me. So you can imagine if this iPad was part of a library cart. I added it to media devices, so it should join. If I had it, let's say this is a library iPad, and I've added it to a, yeah, it's not joining, man. Sorry. There's always technical problems. Just give me 1 second. Sorry, we're also just dealing with the iPad over here. The the um, the device name, right? You want to name the device something that's meaningful to you. So in this case, no. Sorry, bear with me 1 second. So the username, you have it backwards. It's not 0155523 backslash TDSB. It would be TDSB backslash and then your employee number 015523. And also notice that you did the forward slash and not the backslash. So this is a forward slash, right? And this is a backslash. Backslash. See that? So you want to do TDSB and then backslash, like that. And then your employee number. So I have my iPad here that I was trying to rename. I apologize that I can't really show you how the enrollment works because it's not joining our Wi-Fi, which is very annoying. So I'm just going to move ahead here with the actual renaming of the device. So I did have that iPad. Let me just backstep one here because I feel like I got sidetracked. I have this iPad here, the one that I was showing you earlier, and it's got this very long cryptic name. We actually want to rename our iPads to something that is meaningful, and we do that by clicking this little pencil icon next to the iPad. So for example, if this iPad was part of the library or part of a library cart, let's say, I would probably want to call it something like library cart, and then maybe perhaps it has a number or label on the back of it. If your school has stickers on the back of your iPads that are numbered, that's perfect. So you would want to rename your iPads in AirWatch to match your sort of sticker naming convention that you guys have at the school. So I'll imagine that this is library cart iPad number 4. I'm just making this up. There's really no rhyme or reason why I'm doing this. But for you, you would want to rename it something appropriate. If it's a grade 5 iPad, call it grade 5 iPad number 1 or number 2 or number 3. The reason for that will become clear in a few moments when I get to the part where we go to add this thing to a group. But for now, you need to know that you probably want to rename your device so that it's meaningful. So you can do that right here from the AirWatch web console. You rename it to something else. And there's a little checkbox here to set friendly name as the device name. You'll want to check that off because what that'll do is that on the iPad itself, it'll make the name of the iPad appear, the name that I set here appear on the iPad. So for example, right now this iPad, that one that I'm renaming right now, if I go to settings and then general and then about, the name here just shows iPad. I don't know if you can see that. But the name here that I'm setting, library cart number 4, once I check that off and hit save, that checkbox that I checked off is what's gonna change the name on the iPad itself. So if I toggle back here, sometimes it does take a moment, so hopefully this one doesn't take too long. So it still says iPad. I can probably close the settings window and reopen it and see if that has any effect. Just make sure I'm connected to the internet. Okay, still connected, perfect. Wi-Fi is not completely down. So you go to settings and then general and then about, and then that name, now you see it says there, library, there we go, library cart number 4, right? And this actually also works backwards. So you can imagine that when I'm in the AirWatch web console here, and I'm looking at a list of iPads, I don't know that that iPad is the one that I have in my hand. So you can actually change the name on the iPad itself. So if you come in here and I rename it on right here, it'll actually then change the name on AirWatch. Now, the only reason I'm not demonstrating that now is because it has never worked during a webinar for me. For some reason, it takes an incredible amount of time. But let's say I change this to library cart 5, for example, and then I go back. So now the name is library cart number 5, and I hit the home button. Eventually, what should happen is through the nether space, this will eventually make its way over to AirWatch, and then that should change from library cart number 4 to library cart number 5. I hope that makes sense. So again, if you want to rename your iPads on the device side of things, you can do that as well. So you just come in here into settings. It's under settings. On the left-hand side, you go to general, and then you go to about up here at the top. So settings, general, and then about. And then you change the name here to something that's meaningful to you. and that should make its way over to the AirWatch web console. But like I said, during every webinar that I've demonstrated thus far, it has not made its way over. I'm not sure if it's my environment, but I know 100% for a fact that it will work for you. I'm pretty sure it's something to do with our webinar staging environment. But nonetheless, moving along, so that's renaming an iPad. You definitely want to rename all your iPads. Take the time to do it because it will help you later on down the road when you go to add apps to the iPads. There's also another little, so right now we're in devices on the left hand side here, and then list view, and then we can see a list of all our iPads. You can actually kind of shift the focus from a list to just one iPad by clicking the library cart. Todd, did you say you had students that were changing the name? That's pretty funny. I don't think there's any restriction that can prevent them from changing the name, unfortunately. So yeah, you might come into your AirWatch console and see some, as you said, interesting names. But hmm, yeah, that'd be great if they could somehow disable that for students. Because you're right, right now students can come in and change the name, which then makes it a little bit nightmarish to manage from there. But if you have them initially set up with nice names, so grade 1 iPad number 5, grade 1 iPad number 6, grade 1 iPad number 7, etc., and you do that initial grouping, which I'll show in a second, then regardless of what they rename them to going forward, if you have those groups already set up, the name change at that point shouldn't matter. But obviously, it's always good to keep the name, matching. So as I was saying, before I was in list view, which shows me a list of all my devices, I can shift my focus from this list, which you can see over here on the left-hand side, to an actual iPad by clicking the iPad name. How will we know which one it is and which smart group it is connected to? So actually, if I look here and I go to list view, right? So good timing actually. And I click library cart on the right-hand side, it'll show down here smart groups. So this will show me all the different smart groups that this iPad is currently a part of. Now I haven't showed what smart groups are yet, so this is just to answer Todd's question quickly. But that's one way you can check which group that is part of. But for now, I've shifted my focus from the list view to the actual details view. And what it'll do is it'll show me more details regarding the iPad, such as the hardware here. It also show me the last seen value. This last seen value is actually kind of important. It tells you the last time that the iPad was online and reported into AirWatch. So if you see that it shows last seen, 450 days ago, well, that iPad hasn't been talking to AirWatch for a while, and there may be something wrong with it. You might want to pick it up and take a deeper look at that. Shows you just some general stats on this summary page here. I don't want to spend too much time here. Just wanted to show you that you can go from a list to looking at one particular devices. It shows you the serial number over here, so that's a good way you can grab the serial number. It shows you the battery, storage capacity, physical memory, just a bunch of details regarding the actual device. So you may find yourself not spending too much time here, but the more important part about being in details view are these more actions up here. So if you click more actions, there's a whole bunch of things you can do. For example, I can reboot the device, which will just turn it off and turn it back on. Why you would want to do that from the web console and not just on the device itself, I don't know, but the option is there. There is the device wipe. So earlier I mentioned when you first signed into the AirWatch console, it asked you to create a 4-digit PIN code. This is that one instance where you need that 4-digit PIN code. Say, for example, this library iPad cart that I have next to me, which again is this one here. Say, for example, it's having a problem with it and I wanted to wipe it. I'm not going to wipe it because I want to keep this thing alive, but I would come in here to device wipe. Oh, right here. And it's going to ask me to type in a 4-digit PIN code all the way down here off the screen. So I would type in my 4-digit PIN code. I'm going to type it in wrong just so. But the idea is that if I type in my 4-digit PIN code, it would start wiping the device. Is there a place that has all the serial numbers from where I can change the name? Right now, all of them are iPad, and I have to click each individual one to see the serial number and then find. Yeah, so Tina, that's sort of. So Tina's got a good question. It's a kind of a problem point that happens at a lot of schools. Right now, I only have 2 here, but you can imagine if I had a list here of, let's say, 100, and every single iPad that was showing here had a name of iPad. Obviously, it's like, let's pretend that this is one of those iPads right here. Yeah, I'll show you how to change the name on both, Tina. So if I'm looking at the AirWatch console, you can imagine if I had a whole list of iPads here, that 100 of them, and they were all named iPad. Um, Obviously, if I'm looking at iPad here and I click this pencil icon and I decide, okay, let's rename it, I don't know which iPad that actually is, right? So there's nothing that ties this one to the iPad in the physical world, which makes it very difficult to find out which iPad is which. Um, there's two ways you can go about this. If you happen to have a list of iPads already at your school and their serial numbers, then you could basically, let me just show you an example here. So this iPad, let's say I want to rename, well, sorry, I just want to make this perfect crystal clear. So I'm just going to rename this back to iPad. And doom, and doom. Okay. Thanks for joining us, Siobhan. I understand if you gotta go. Feel free to. You guys can leave it whenever you guys want. Unfortunately, and of course you can come back and watch it. Uh, these things do tend to take a long time. So I have the iPad renamed back to iPad here. So you can imagine if I had a whole list here named iPad, and let's say I don't know that this iPad is indeed the one that I have next to me here. How do I know that that iPad is this one? One thing you can do is you can get, if you go back into AirWatch here, you can see that there are the serial numbers. You can change the, sorry, you can actually export a list of all this information into Excel by clicking this little button here. It says export. This is kind of advanced stuff. I didn't really want to get too much into it, but I just wanted to show you because you did ask how can you see the serial numbers from here. This is one way of doing it. You can export the list, and then eventually what will happen is this exports page will show a once it's done. Right now it says processing. This is basically going to export a list of all my iPads and put it in like a zip file. And in this spreadsheet that it gives me, it's going to have a column for the serial number. So that's a good little file that you can work with that has all the serial numbers. But I'll just wait for that. Hopefully it's done soon. Come on. That's going to take a while. I'm just looking at the status here to see if that changes to ready. But right now it's showing process. I'm going to go back. So before getting into the creating a list with serial numbers and then having like a spreadsheet of all your iPads and their serial numbers, before we get into that, the quickest way to rename your iPads, Todd Larder touched on it, is that you do it on the iPads themselves. And this obviously does take a while, but this is probably the best way to do it. So you can imagine if I looked at the back of my iPad here and it's got, let's see, this one's called SME Training iPad. So if I have a sticker on the back and it's called like, let's pretend this says iPad 5. If it said iPad 5, I would take this device, flip it around, and then I would go to Settings, General on the left-hand side, then About, and then Name up here, and then I would change the name here. So I would call this Library iPad 5. So that would change the name to Library iPad 5. And I've renamed it on the device, but what eventually happens is it does make its way back over to AirWatch. So then in due time, what will happen is that iPad right here will eventually become Library iPad 5. Now, I did say that I didn't demonstrate it. I mean, I'm kind of demonstrating it now, but the name's not going to change here on AirWatch, and I have no idea why. But I promise you that for you, it will work. And I know that's like, how can I believe you? You can't even show me. I promise you it'll work. It'll work if you do it that way. You go on the device, you change the name on the device, and it will make its way over to AirWatch. It does not work for my environment. I have no idea why. So for me, you can either rename it from the console here by clicking the pencil, and then renaming it here, which is obviously difficult because I don't know that that one is that. Or you can go to the device and actually rename it on the device. Both should eventually change the name here. Okay. I'm going to rename this back here. So we'll call this Library iPad 5. All right. Ooh. Moving along. Not that. So I have my iPad renamed. I showed you that you can go into the device view here, or list details view rather, and then right in the top right hand corner you can go to more actions, and then you can wipe the device and type in your PIN code. You can do an update on the device, so you can imagine if there was an update to this iPad, I can push it out from here. You did ask if you can clear the passcode. So if I did have a passcode on this device, where did it go? Clear passcode, right here. If I did have a passcode on this device, I could clear it and it would remove that 4-digit number that, let's say, a student who put on. Again, by default, these iPads don't have passcodes on them, the AirWatch iPads. So a student shouldn't have been able to put a passcode on there to begin with. But if you say signed into the AirWatch agent app and you didn't sign out, and then that setting was still open for a student to put a passcode back on, you could clear it from here by doing that. I hope that answers your question. But that's the general idea of the details view. So with that, I'm just going to jump right in to how to add an app to the iPad. But in order to do that, I'm going to actually we're going to skip past apps and books. You'd think that would be the obvious thing to go to, but we're going to go to groups and settings, because what we do is we take our iPads and we group them first. So you put your iPads into a group, and then you take apps and apply them to that group, which you'll see in just a second. So you just click groups and settings over here on the left hand side. You can click groups right here in the center of the page, and then we're going to go to assignment groups. And what this is going to do, it's going to show me a list of all my smart groups. You may or may not see anything here if your environment is fresh. For me, I've created a whole bunch here. I already have one called library iPads. I'm going to make a separate one called library iPads. But the idea is that you create these little groups here, and you would then put iPads inside of them. So I'm going to show you how to do that. There's a button right here at the top of the page that says Add Smart Group. When I click Add Smart Group, it's going to prompt me to create a new smart group. I'm going to toggle over right here at the top. You see that it's on a tab. This is Select Criteria. We don't want to be on Select Criteria, and it always comes here by default. It's very annoying because we don't really use it. But what you want to do when you're creating a smart group is go from Select Criteria to Select Devices or Users. Because Select Criteria is going to try to create a group based on parameters with the device. So like, what version is the device? You know, what operating system, what model? We don't want that. We want to manually create our groups. So we go to Select Devices or Users. It's going to ask us, hey, by switching, you're going to lose all your information. That's totally fine because, you know, we haven't done anything. And now we're in Select Devices or Users. So now we're going to actually manually put iPads into this group. So I already have one iPad called Library iPad Cart or something like that. I'm going to create a group that would reflect that this group is going to contain all my Library Cart iPads, let's say. So in the name field, I create something that's meaningful to me. Now this is why we renamed our devices earlier, and this is why it's important to rename your devices, because now I'm going to actually take those devices and put them in a group. So I'm going to put my cursor here on the left hand side under devices, and right now there's only one iPad there, which is the one that I created earlier. But you can imagine if you had a list here that had hundreds of iPads, all called iPad, you know, you wouldn't know which one belongs to the library cart to put it in. So it's very important that you rename your devices so that way when you come to this part here to group them, it'll make sense to group them. So now I know that, you know, I have library iPad 5 and it's part of my cart. Well, I can add that one in. So I click the library iPad, click add, and it moves over. Right now, again, I only have one in there, and I was going to show you how to put a new one in there, but I was unable to get my iPad to join. But for you, depending on how many devices you have, you'll see a longer list here of all the different iPads that you have. So I've only added one, and unfortunately I only can add one. I apologize for that. I was hoping to get another one in there to simulate it a little bit better. But right now, this group, Library Cart iPads, contains one iPad, Library iPad 5. And now I can save that, and I'm ready to now deploy an app to that iPad. And when not to that iPad, but to all the iPads in that group. So how I do that is I'm going to toggle over here on the left-hand side under Apps and Books. And the first screen that we come to is actually where we want to stay. You see this Purchase tab here, and then a whole bunch of whatever these are. It says Unknown. A lot of people, they come in here and then they see this, and then it's a little bit convoluted as to why that's all there. basically this is like a board-wide list of all the apps, we'll say. Just because you see something here doesn't mean it's available for you. So what we do is we take this list of apps that we can work with, and we filter it down by typing in either our school name or our school trillium number. In this case, my school is called Maple Grove Community School. It's a fictitious school. But I can search here on the right-hand side under search list for Maple Grove. And what that'll do is it'll take that entire list of apps and show me the apps that I can work with. So these are my apps. These are the ones that I can actually assign and I can work with. Now, how come I can assign these ones and not all of them? And for that matter, how did these get here and how come these are mine? Well, these all get here through the app request form. And the app request form is on Service IT. So if we go to Service IT, actually, is it on our knowledge base now? I'm just going to show Service IT.mdm. So serviceit.tdsb.on.ca/mdm. I know that's a mouthful, but you can actually get there if you just go to Service IT. Like this is our hopefully I'm hoping everyone here has been on Service IT before. This is how you can log tickets and web chat with us and stuff like that. This is like our our page for you guys to come and interface with us. But from Service IT, you can actually click the client service desk up here at the top, and you can go to our knowledge base here. So this is all of our documentation and little articles that you can read if you have a problem with anything. And on our knowledge base, on the left-hand side, we have a section here for AirWatch. And once we're on the AirWatch section here, okay, Rosa. Yeah, we're definitely going to contact your principal to get you access. We take all the people who don't have access and then we contact them afterwards. But anyway, so from the AirWatch knowledge base page, there's a section here for adding an app. Where is it? Requesting an app, right here. So we request an app by using what's known as the app request form. So the first thing it says here is submit your app request using the app request form by clicking here. So if we click here, I'm going to open it in a new tab so I can come back to here. This form is what you fill out to get apps into AirWatch. So an app request form must be filled out for every app you want to use in AirWatch. So you submit the app request form, it goes to Teaching and Learning. Teaching and Learning vets it, makes sure that it's okay. They verify it, and then they add it to your AirWatch environment. So if I requested an app, in this case, actually, you can both put in paid apps and free apps. So about halfway down through this form, it says the app type. There's both paid, free, and both. So if I wanted to submit a form with paid apps, I can check the paid app. It does require your principal's approval, as well as the cost center and the general ledger for your school. All those values are required when you're submitting the form. And then you would just basically fill out the different apps that you want here at the bottom. I'm not going to spend too much time on how to submit the form. If you read this article, it details everything. So it takes you not only to the app request form, but then it shows you how to fill it out. And the idea here is that once this app request form is approved, it'll then show up in AirWatch here. So all these apps are here because I submitted an app request form that says I want Epic, Explain Everything, Gmail, Google Classroom, etc., etc. Then I get an email notification from app requests at tdsb.on.ca saying that your apps are approved and they're ready to go. Once you got that email, when you come in here, you go to Apps and Books, type in your school name in the top right-hand corner where I put in Maple Grove, and you'll see that all your apps are now available to work with. Okay? What's that? Sync assets, yeah. If you come in here, let's say I submit an app request form. Let's say I came in here and I said I want a new app, and I filled it down here at the bottom, and then I hit submit, and then I get an email from Teaching and Learning saying that your app is available to use. Then I come back into AirWatch here, and I go to Apps and Books, and I go Native, and then I search my school, Maple Grove, and I still don't see that app here. One thing that you can do is you can press this Sync Assets button, and what that does is it forces AirWatch to check to see if there's any new apps. So it's supposed to happen automatically, but the Sync Assets button forces AirWatch to go and check to see if there's any new apps. So that's one thing you can try if for whatever reason you come in here and you don't see the app that you requested. But once you do have an app that you request and you want to add an app to a group of iPads, what we're going to do is we're actually going to click the name of the app that we want. So I'm going to click Epic, but I'm actually not going to deploy Epic because I just want to show you something quickly. Is we click the app name, and when we first get an app in our AirWatch environment, there's this big blue button smack dab in the middle of the screen that says Enable Device Assignment. This button needs to be pressed for every app that you have. When you press this big blue button, it'll ask you, are you sure you want to enable device-based assignment? You click OK, and then you'll never see that blue button again. Now, I'm telling you about this big blue button because it is important. If you don't press this big blue button, it actually will not, it'll prompt you to sign in with an Apple ID for the app, which we don't want. The whole point of AirWatch is, we don't want to have the Apple IDs. We want to push apps out centrally and have it all work through AirWatch. But if you don't push this big blue button, it'll scream at you, and sometimes you'll just see that your apps don't deploy. So that is one thing that's important. I'm not going to push it just because I need to show people for future webinars that that button is there, because once I press it, it's gone forever. So I'm just going to leave that unchecked. But I just wanted to demonstrate that. But here's an app that I've actually already pushed the button on. Explain Everything. You can see that there is no big blue button smack down in the middle of the screen. That's because I've pressed it before, and it's not going to bother me for that anymore. So I'm just going to adjust the page here. There we go. So you press just backtrack here. So you find the app that you want to deploy. Say I want to deploy Explain Everything to all my iPads that are in the library cart. I click the Explain Everything app. It comes up here. And what I do is on this screen, I just go to Save and Assign. Do not stay on the screen other than for pushing that big blue button. And it's going to prompt me to add an assignment. So when I click the Add Assignment button up here, this is where all the magic happens, is determining where that app goes. When you click Add Assignment, you're on the screen here, and you're going to hover your mouse over Add Assignment By right here in the middle of the screen, and then we're going to click License Code by Smart Group. And what happens is that this little box appears like that. So now in this little text box that appears, I'm now going to choose the group that I want to deploy this app to. So once I put my cursor in here, you can see that there's a list of all the different smart groups that I have. There was grade 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The one that I just created was called Library Cart iPads, and it's right here in the list. I don't know if, hopefully you can see it. It's a little blurry on my end, but I imagine the quality is a little bit better for you. Once you find the group that you want to deploy it to, so imagine I want to install Explain Everything on all my iPads that are in the library cart. Again, I just put my cursor in there, scroll down, find my group that I want to deploy it to, and then I click it. And then now it's going to appear there in that field. One thing to note are these 3 columns here: devices, allocated, and redeemed. Because I've chosen this group, it tells me how many devices are in that smart group. There's only one, unfortunately. I wanted to show you with more, but I only have one. So there's only one iPad in this smart group, but I need to deploy, let's say it said 50, right? I need to allocate licenses to that group. So even though the app is free, what we do with free apps is we give free apps 500 licenses or 1,000, depending on what app it is and how many iPads you have at your school. So for example, I have 500 free licenses of Explain Everything. And it's like, well, it's a free app. Why do we need licenses? Well, even at just being a government institution, we need to be accountable for even free licenses that we use. And the idea is that, a developer could say, hey, it's a free app, but maybe I don't want it to be free if you're using that many. Using the entire Toronto District School Board's using my app, maybe I want to charge. And we have a need to be cognizant or know how many licenses we're using, even if the app is free. So that's why we have this license count at all. So right now I have 500 free ones to play with, but I need to allocate licenses to this group. So I'm saying that this group of iPads can have X amount of licenses. I have 500, I can give it 50, for example, as long as it's less than 500. But the idea here is that you want to have at least the amount of devices you have So if there's one device in here, you want to do at least one or more, right? Because I can't give it 0, because I can't give 0 licenses to one device. There's no license to give. I can give 1 license to one device. But what I recommend is when you're in here and you're setting this allocated value, you take whatever value is in your devices and then you kind of buffer some space on the end for growth. So right now I only have 1 iPad in my library cart iPad group. But let's say tomorrow I'm expecting an order of 20 more. I don't want to have to come back in here and change that allocated value from 1 to 20. I'm just going to start off with something obnoxiously high so that it'll accommodate for future growth. So allocated, I'm going to set 50. I only have 1 iPad in there, but heck, I might put 49 more iPads in there a year down the road. Who knows? But the idea is that you take that number that you want to allocate from here, and you'll see that the values will refresh up here. So now it says I have 450 licenses to play with. 50 of them are taken, and now we're good to go. So when I hit save, what will happen is it'll ask me to publish, and it's going to then deploy the app to that iPad. But before I do that, I just want to show you one other thing here. Leave all these values down here default, except for this one is what I want to show you. So there's auto and on demand. I'm going to show you auto right now. And auto, what that means is it's going to automatically start pushing that app to the iPad as soon as you click save. But then afterwards, I'm just going to show you on demand really quick with another app. But I'm going to leave it as auto for now. So what this is saying, I'm just going to explain everything to the library cart iPads group, which has 1 device in it automatically right now. I hit save. It's going to say, here's a list of your assignments, and this is the one that I just created. That's great. Save and publish. And then it's going to say these are the different iPads that are going to get the app. So it's sort of like a preview, like, hey, just a heads up. With the assignment rule you created, these are all the iPads that are going to get it. Works for me, only 1. I hit publish. So what that'll do is that now that app should be trickling its way over to the devices. Sometimes it takes its sweet time here on the webinar. So what I'll do is I'll toggle over there. I don't see it on there now. Yeah, so far it's the default apps. But what's going to happen eventually is that app will make its way over here, and I'll show you when it does. But one thing to check if you've deployed an app and you still don't see it is that you can kind of make sure that the device has an internet connection. So open up Safari, test something on the web, hit go. Make sure you have a connection. It can take a while depending on your school's network speed and depending on the iPad's connectivity. Eventually it will make its way down. I will continue to watch it, and once I see it deploy, I'll switch back over. But to be cognizant of time, I'm just going to show you the on-demand as well. So that was deploying Explain Everything. And now when I'm looking at a list of my apps, and again, I did that by searching Maple Grove in the top right-hand corner here. You would search your school name. When I'm looking at a list of my apps, if you scroll over to the right here, you can actually see how many iPads are currently using that. So right now, that Explain Everything, which is on this line here, this middle number between the 500, which basically shows you how many licenses you have, tells you how many iPads have claimed that app so far. So I can see that this is 0, which makes sense because I deployed it to my iPad, but it hasn't gotten it yet. So I already know that it's not what I want it to be. It's still showing 0, but eventually that will reflect a 1 once the iPad gets it. So this little column here basically will show you how many different apps. So I can actually see that, oh, this one has Google Classroom. Oh, there it goes. Wait, real quick, switch. Boom. Haha. So you can see that that app is now deploying. It's loading right there in the bottom right-hand corner if you can't see it. So that all happened through the AirWatch console. So you can imagine with one device, not that impressive. But if I have 50 devices, and I want to put one app on 50 devices, well, that didn't take too long as far as, getting that app on there versus, going on each app, going to the app store, finding the app, downloading the app, typing in your Apple ID, typing in your password, hitting that, it takes too much time. So with AirWatch, that all is deployed automatically there. And that was the deployment by choosing the type auto. So when I come back in here, remember how I showed you that value in the middle showed 0? Yeah, 000 just means that none of the apps have been deployed. So I'm going to refresh this by clicking this little button up here and explain everything right here. If I scroll over to the right, that 0 is now 1. Oh, those zeros, yeah, so the 000, you're looking at the redeemable codes section. You want to go to the manage distribution column. That'll show you how many currently have it. So 000 is the redeemable, and this one should show you that. So on the manage distribution column, you should see, the number of iPads that have it out of how many licenses total that you have. So that explain everything now shows 1 out of 499. So I can actually scroll down this list and double check all my information here. So like, for example, Google Classroom, I see one device has it. Obviously, I only have one device in my environment, and sure enough, if I go back to my iPad, it has Google Classroom on it already. It's right there. So it kind of gives you a general overview of what kind of licenses have been occupied. But now I actually want to show you, so that was automatic. I'm going to show you on demand. I got to keep track where my mouse is. So I'm going to pick another app. I'm going to choose Scratch Junior here. Ah, there you go. See? Found it. Cool. So I'm going to choose Scratch Junior on this list. I'm going to go through the same steps that I saw before. I come in here, make sure my big blue button is pressed. I don't see a big blue button. That's great. I can now proceed past here. Click Save and Assign. Takes me to the next screen. I don't have any assignments. Let's create an assignment. I'm going to create the Add Assignment button right here. It's going to say, let's build the assignment out from here. So I'm going to hover my mouse over Add Assignment By. I'm going to choose License Code by Smart Group and click that. It's going to make that text box appear where now I can choose my group. I'm going to put my cursor into that text box here. And I'm going to scroll down and find the group that I want to work with. I'm still working with my library card iPads, which has a whopping 1 device in it. And I'm going to give 50 licenses, or heck, why not? Let's do 100 licenses to this group that has 1 iPad in it. And now, before I click Save, before I showed you auto, so if I click Save now, that Scratch Junior will automatically shoot its way over to the iPad. I want to show you on demand. So I'm going to toggle auto to on demand. And now I'm going to click Save, which is not going to push it over. Save and publish. It's going to say these are all the iPads that'll get it. Sure. All right, so if it's asking me if those are all the iPads that can get it, why won't they get it automatically? What's on demand? So if I toggle back to my iPad, no matter how long I wait here, I'm never going to see that app appear. But what that does do is it gives me the option to add it manually. So what you can do is you can actually have a whole bunch of apps and leave it up to the person who has the iPad in their hand to install. So you make it a catalog. So remember that catalog that we had at the beginning there? It's going to put that app in the catalog. So there's the agent, which is sort of the brains to check in and check out, and that catalog is for all my on-demand apps. So I added Scratch Junior as an on-demand app. If I click catalog, it's going to open up a web page to the catalog. It's going to show me out of the apps that apply to this device, which ones are installed. In this case, it's still showing Explain Everything is processing. I don't know if you can see that, but Explain Everything actually is already installed, so it's a little bit inaccurate right now. But you can see that the other apps that are already on this device are showing installed. So even automatic apps will still show here, and it'll show you that that iPad in fact has that app by the installed button. But you'll see that in Scratch Junior over here on the right hand corner, right hand side, has an install button. So just, so I can now tap that install button, and what will happen is it'll ask me, are you sure you want to install it? And I sure do. I'll click install over here. Oops, let me just do my thumb. It'll say processing. And if I press the home button, of course, nothing ever happens right away with AirWatch, which is frustrating, but let me just come back in here and make sure that worked. Yeah, see, sometimes that happens. You come in here, you click install, it says it's installing, and then nothing happens. Install. It says processing. Press the home button to check out what it's doing. Oh, there you go. Okay. So, sometimes second or third time's a charm. And that app is now deploying. So it didn't make its way over there automatically, but it gave me the option to go into the catalog and then install it manually. So I do know some schools, what they did is they basically just took all their apps. So they one by one went through all their apps and they made them all on demand. So, for example, let's go into the Seesaw here. They just went, oh, there's another enable device assignment button. So you always got to press that. I'm going to skip past that in case I want to show that. Starfall. So you come in here, save and assign. And just literally for every single app, they come in here and they choose, instead of, the iPads all, I created that library cart, that library cart group that was in here. Your environment and every environment should actually have another group in here called iPads all. So right here, this one says iPads all. If you want to just, you don't want to group it individually into different little groups, and you just say, hey, look, I want all these apps on all my iPads. I'm not worried about, making sure my library looks different from my grade 1s or 5s. It's totally fine. We have a pre-created group for you called iPads all, which by default contains all the iPads in it. So right now, obviously, it still shows 1 because I only have 1. I'm sorry about that. But if I had 100 in here, this automatically would contain all 100 iPads. So you can come in here and say all 100 iPads, give them 100 licenses, and you can either choose auto, so right away push out all the apps to all 100 of my iPads, or you can choose on demand, where it takes that app and puts it in all the catalogs. That's all. Actually, sorry. So while I was briefly silent there for a second, Felipe brought up a good point. Is that sometimes the reason you shouldn't really do the iPads all group is that what'll happen is if you take a bunch of apps and you push it out to all your iPads, some of your iPads may not have a lot of storage on them. So let's say you have a really old iPad that has 16 gigabytes of storage, and then you push out, over 16 gigabytes worth of apps. That'll max out the storage on the device, and then it won't be able to actually install that app. So it's just one thing you want to be cognizant of. So what they could do though is they could make, they could put them all as on demand. So what this rule says is give all my iPads the option, the on demand option of installing the app. It's not going to force it, but any app can now pick up any iPad can now be picked up, go to the catalog, find the app that they want and tap install. Sort of giving the control to, I would assume, the teacher or the student. But that was the option. That was the difference between auto and on demand. I just wanted to show that. So that's adding an app. So you can imagine, I'm just going to cancel out of this. You can do that with all your apps. Unfortunately, you have to do it on an app by app basis. It sounds like a lot at the beginning. So for example, if I want all these apps on all my iPads, I have to go into each one and create that rule for every single app. But it sounds like a lot up front, but going forward, when you get a new iPad, or if your school buys new iPads, or say you need to wipe an iPad, when you put that iPad back into AirWatch, it remembers and it'll automatically start downloading all the apps right away. If I wipe my iPad right now and it do that initial setup, and then it comes back into AirWatch, and if I had a rule that said, all iPads get these apps, it'll automatically start downloading all those apps right away. So the upfront administration may be a little bit annoying, but when you have a lot of iPads, it'll certainly make your life a heck of a lot easier, and especially going forward. So that's the list of apps. Go through each one, add it to your iPads, click the name, make sure there's no big blue enable device assignment button right here before you proceed. Click save and assign, and create your assignment groups. You can create multiple. So right now this one's Google Docs, and it shows here that it's going to go to all my iPads. You can be even more granular with it. You can create another assignment for the same app, and then maybe say, so for all my iPads, it's going to be on demand, but for grade 1s, I'm gonna force it. I'm just making up values here. None of this matters, and leave it as auto. So, and then hit save. So you can have multiple in there. So just an idea. I hope that makes some sort of sense. But I'm going to proceed past that now. That's the idea. You group your iPads into the Smart Groups section here under Groups and Settings, Groups, Assignment Groups. Create all your groups the way that you like. If you don't even want to mess around with all this creating of groups, like I said, you have one called iPads All that already have all the iPads in them, and then you can work with it from there. So if you don't want to deal with all this separation and making each one have its own purpose, totally fine. So you can use the iPads all group. Then you come in apps and books. Again, you search your school name up here in the top right hand corner. You get a list of all your apps. Click the app. Check for that blue button. Not there. Save and assign. Add assignment. Hover your mouse over add assignment by. License code by smart group. Choose your group. Grade 1 iPads. 50 licenses. Shooting for the moon. Automatic deployment. Save. Save and publish. Save. Boom. So if I had an iPad in that grade 1 group, it would get Gmail. So, once you get the hang of it with one or two, it becomes real breezy with the rest of them. So that's apps and books. I have iPads that I enroll, but the background is not the blue TDSB screen that shows. It has the AirWatch icons, though. Does that mean the iPad is enrolled, or is there an issue? Anna, what happens? This is actually something that happens quite commonly, especially if field services went on site to do your enrollment. Generally, what they do is they pick up the iPad, they wipe it, they put it in an AirWatch, and then they basically just put it aside. If that iPad doesn't maintain its connection during that enrollments part, it sort of gets stuck in like this weird limbo state. So you probably have that beach background on the iPad, but it still has the AirWatch Agent app in it. It's sort of like it's like in a half enrolled, half not. I know that isn't very clear based on my description, but the end of it is I would recommend that you wipe that iPad again. Wipe it and do the enrollment, assuming there's nothing on there. Yeah. There's also you can also try. I mean, if you don't want to wipe it, one thing you can try before you wipe it is launch the Agent app. If it's asking you for a username and password, then just type in your employee number and password, and that might kick it off where it left off. If you launch the Agent app and it doesn't ask you for a username and password, I'd wipe it. I'd wipe it and re-enroll it. I'm hoping that's not too many of them. So that's the apps and books. Hopefully that answers your question, Anna. So one other thing I want to show, so that was deploying apps. There's one other cool thing now that we're kind of approaching the end, because I think that was the most important part, is that you can see your list of devices here. You can rename your iPads so that when you go to put them in the groups on the left-hand side here, you have them in their groups that make sense to you. Then you come in apps and books on the left-hand side here. Search your app name, find the app that you want to deploy, and then run through the steps from there. That's the gist of it. So that's adding apps. If you want to remove the app, say you no longer have a need for it, it's actually the same thing but backwards. So let's say now, what app did I deploy? I think it was Explain Everything. So say I no longer want to Explain Everything on all my iPads anymore. I'm going to click Explain Everything. I am then going to go to Save and Assign. And then there's my assignment rule right there that says automatically deploy to the library cart. Well, I don't want it on there anymore. So I'm going to tap that rule with that little radio button to the left of it, and I'm going to delete it. And it's saying you want to delete it? I sure do. Click Save. Save and Publish. It's once again, it's going to tell me what it's going to do. So before it said it was going to install it, now it's going to say I'm going to remove it. Are you sure? I sure do. Click Publish. Now when I go back to my iPad, what I should see is that app should disappear. Usually the removal is a lot quicker than the actual adding. Oh, it's gone. Yeah, see? Just in case you forgot, it was Explain Everything. Scratch Junior is still there, but Explain Everything is now gone. So that's removing the app. You just kind of work backwards from it. So you add the app, you want it gone, you remove the assignment rule, and it pulls it off all the iPads. So you can like mass delete it off all your iPads. Last thing I want to show, since some people are still here, if you have to go, I totally understand at this point, is just web clips. Instead of an app, you can push a web clip, which is basically like a hyperlink. It just basically puts a shortcut to a web page on the iPad. It's also under apps and books here. But instead of up here, you can see this menu on the right-hand side. So apps and books and native, this is where all our apps are. If we toggle down to web and then web links, it's going to give us the option to build a web link or a web clip. I will show you how that works, but first I got to find a link. So let's go www.tdsb.on.ca. What link do I want to show on my iPad? So I'm going to show the virtual library. That's usually what I use as an example. So if I go to find your school, I'm just going to pick a random school, school name. You can ignore all this. This is all for the sole purpose of getting a link. Let's take Macklin, why not? Can I use it for uploading a link to a Google Doc survey? Hey, yes you can. In fact, let's do that. I like the sound of that. Let's do forms.google.com, right? I'm just going to quickly create a link here. It's called My Cool Survey. And option 1 is I like it, and then option 2 is I don't like it. And I'm going to, why not? My cool survey. Do you like it? Response is required, and I'm going to send, and I'm pretty sure you can get a link here. There it is. So here's a link to my URL. So let's say I want this survey to appear on all the iPads in my school. I can take this link here and I can copy it. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back over to AirWatch. Actually, before I do that, I just want to make sure, because this would be a bad example if the permissions were wrong. Make this a quiz. Oh, restrict to TDSB users. That's what I don't want. So I just for the sake of example, I don't want to spend too much time on how Google Forms work, but I don't want to restrict it to TDSB users. I just want anyone to be able to click my form and submit it. But I have the link in my clipboard. And what I mean by clipboard is if I do Control V, that's the link, or I can right click and go to paste, and the link is in my clipboard. So those are the two links for my form that I just created. I'm going to go back into AirWatch over here, and I'm going to, like I said, I was on Apps and Books, Web Links. I'm going to click Add Application. I'm going to choose the platform here as Apple iOS because we're only working with iPads. I'm going to click Continue. It's going to ask me for a name. I'm going to call this My Cool Form. And now it's asking me for the URL. So this is where I take that link that I have here. This is for that form that I just created. Can take that whole thing there. Well, right click, go to copy, come back over here, and in the URL field I'm going to paste that there. And I'm going to call this My Cool Form again. Please submit it. So just a description. The description actually really doesn't even matter because you don't even see it anywhere, to be honest. But if somebody else comes in here, at least they'll know why. I can put some details there. So that's all the details I pretty much need to get this thing going. Is the name so the name's going to be like what it appears on the iPad. You'll see it in just a second. And then the link is where it's going. I'm going to go to images. I can create a little icon for it. So if I want that to look a certain way, I can grab an image for it. What image do I use? Smiley. Let's go to images. Let's say I want this to be the icon here. I'm going to take that. I'm going to save that image on my desktop, and I'll call it Smile. Again, you can really ignore all these steps. This is just me kind of blasting through this, but the idea is that I have a picture and I have a form, and right here. So now I want that survey link to have that smiley icon. I was on the details tab here, and that's where I filled out all this. I'm going to toggle over to images. I'm going to click or drag my files here. I'm going to click this so I can go find my picture. I have smile.jpg on my desktop there. That's that image I just grabbed. I'm going to click open. There it is. Perfect. So that's the icon I'm going to use. So when you look at the iPad, that link is going to look with that smiley face as the icon. I'm then going to toggle over to assignment. And just like we did before with the apps, we're assigning this web clip to a smart group. So just like we took an app and we assigned it to a smart group, which had a bunch of iPads in it, or in my case, only one, we're going to do the same thing here. I'm going to take this web clip, I'm going to assign it to my library card iPads here. Or if I want to make it easier, like I said, you don't have to use smart groups at all. You can just use the one that we already created for you, the iPads all group, either one. So iPads all will put it on all the iPads. Library cart will just put on my library cart iPads. So I'll just put on all iPads here. There's some other settings here. I wouldn't worry too much about exclusions in publish mode. This is really the only one you want to be cognizant of, is the publish mode. Just like we did earlier with apps, there was two options. There was auto and on demand. Do I want this to show in the catalog? Then I put it in on demand. Do I want it to right away make its way over to the iPad? I put it on auto. I'm going to choose auto because I want this to show on all the iPads, and I don't want them to go looking for it. I want it there right away. You can expand advanced down here for some more options. I wouldn't be too concerned about these advanced options, but it just gives you two more things you can set. Removable means that the user can actually remove the link off the iPad. Let's say I want this survey to appear and I don't want students to mess around with it, I want that survey to always be there, I can make removable no, so that when they can't remove that link from there. There's also full screen. So because this is a link, it actually opens up in Safari. And then with Safari at the top of the screen, let me just show you so I don't sound crazy. So what it's going to do is it's going to launch, let's say I want that web clip to open, it's going to actually launch in Safari here. And when I choose full screen, you can see at the top here, there's all these controls. There's back, forward, there's a bookmark, there's the address, the refresh button. Full screen will get rid of all that, and it'll make it like take up the whole screen. In fact, I'll just show you. So I'll make it full screen here. So I'm going to choose full screen. Oh, my cursor's wrong place. Yes. Okay, no worries, Anna. Take care. We're basically done anyways. So I've chose full screen as my option. I click yes. I'm going to do save and publish. It's going to say, hey, we're going to push it out to that one iPad. That's totally fine. Publish. And now that should appear on my iPad. So I'm going to toggle back over to my iPad here. Where's my mouse? And if I hit the home button, there it is. My cool form. Look at that, smiley face. And if I tap that, it's going to open up in full screen mode, as you can see. And there's my survey. So when I said full screen mode earlier, you can see that there's no controls up here at the top. And of course, now I've basically forced everybody to have a link to my survey, and then they can submit their answer, right? So that's that. And there was also that removable option. If I tap and hold it, usually this is how you remove apps. You tap and hold it until they all start wiggling like that. If you can remove it, there will be a little X in the top left-hand corner. In this case, I made it non-removable, and by default, you can't remove any of the stuff that comes with the iPad, so those all don't have X's next to them. So that's sort of kind of stuck in that I can't remove it. But you can imagine that if I went back over here and I came in here and let's say I edited that with the pencil icon, and I'll go back to advanced. Oh. Since you asked the question, once I'm done, how do I delete the survey from the iPad? Okay. So, let's say I want to remove it now. That iPad, so that's still on there. I want to get rid of this. What I do is I come back in here. So imagine, let's just say, let's make this more realistic. I sign into AirWatch. I got all my results. I sign into AirWatch, and this is the screen I see. If I want to remove that web clip now, I go to Apps and Books. Oops, Jesus. Apps and Books on the left-hand side. Again, I go to Web links, and it's going to show me that that's still there. That's the one that I created. I can either delete the whole thing entirely, like that. But the problem with deleting the whole thing entirely is that if I ever want to do it again, I have to recreate it, right? So if I delete it, it's gone. Or the other option is rather than deleting it, I can go to Edit with this pencil button here, and I can make changes to it. So I can say I no longer want it assigned, so under the assignment tab up here at the top, to all iPads. I can remove the assignment part of it and do save and publish. It's saying, by the way, there's no smart group assigned. The web app will not be assigned to any device. Are you sure you want to continue? Sure. So I still have it there for keeps. So in the future, if I want to resend that out, it's still there. I don't have to rebuild it, get the picture, find the URL. It's all still there, but I did take the assignment away. So I'm saying no longer does this go to all iPads. So now when I go back to my iPad, you'll see that it should be gone now. So yeah, it's gone. So I hope that answers your question. I think that covers just about the important parts. There's always so much more to know. We've already gone incredibly over time, and I apologize. A lot of people have probably already bailed out, and that's totally understandable, but they can always go back and watch this video. That's why I wanted to continue it, as well as I have some people to the left of me that are new and in training that wanted to see it too as well. So again, sorry about taking so long. That pretty much concludes the end of the webinar. Uh, but I will give you this section, rather the opportunity now that if you have any questions, you can always ask us. I will take whatever time you need to answer your question. I guess actually before I take any more questions is that I just do want to point out that everything that I've said here today can be found on our knowledge base, which is on Service IT. There's the link directly to it, but you can go to Service IT and find our knowledge base from there. The link to the video is going to be what you have now. So, for example, that email invitation that you got with the link to the video, um, as soon as the stream is over, you can click that exact same link and it'll just, instead of being a live event, it'll just show the video of the recording from the moment I stop it. So the same link you have now is the same link you'll use. Let me see if I can pull this on my screen here. So, oops. So you guys are probably all seeing this now. So this is what I had on my screen watching the chat. Our channel here has all the videos here. So CSD YouTube, you can subscribe to it. But all it is basically webinars right now. We may add some more stuff in the future. We're thinking about, instead of doing webinars, we just chunk this thing down into individual videos. But if you go to the videos tab here on our channel, you can see every webinar is recorded. So here's our live event. There's last week's, the week before, or not week's, month rather, and some other videos. We're going to populate this more or work more with it. But that's the idea here, is that you can come back and watch that same video or previous ones on that screen. Our knowledge base can be found on Service IT. So if you have any questions regarding AirWatch, we do already have some public documentation posted. At this point, I can't see the chat anymore, so tell me if there's anything going on. Okay, so serviceit.tdsb.on.ca will take you to our page where basically you can chat with us, open up a chat if you want, or you can click Client Service Desk up here at the top. It'll take you to where you can log a ticket online if you want, or in the case of AirWatch, you can click this knowledge base icon here, and that'll take you to all of our documentation. Of course, I'm signed in with a bad account, but once you're there, you should be able to see more regarding the documentation. Those links are actually all in the bottom of the video here too as well. We got the the knowledge base link there, the AirWatch login link, and the app request form. And oh, you already sent the link in the chat. Okay. So with all that said, if there's any questions, I'll give you a moment to mull it over, and feel free to ask it. I'll take the time to go into detail if it's something more specific that I didn't quite cover. I'll give you guys about 3 more minutes if you have no questions. Great presentation. Oh, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. All right, so I really only see that 3 people are watching, and I imagine it's you and one not saying anything. So I'm going to end that there. If you do have any questions, please do contact us at the Client Service Desk. Our number is 416-395-4357. We are option 5. If you press option 4, that's Trillium. We're option 5. Option 5, give us a call. We'll be able to answer that. If you have some deeper questions, or you can always say, can I please speak to an AirWatch specialist, and somebody will transfer it to either me or Felipe or someone else there who is very knowledgeable in AirWatch. You can email us, you can start a web chat as you saw, or you can check out all of our documentation. But also, you guys will receive a feedback form. Please do fill it out if you have an opportunity. It just lets us know what it is that we're doing wrong or what it is that we're doing right. The biggest complaint we hear about this is the length. Unfortunately, we don't really have a way of condensing it down. We are working on making this into segmented videos. So rather than having a webinar every month, we can just cover, these components in different videos, so you can just watch what you got to watch. And then maybe we'll even put it in like a YouTube playlist, so you can see the whole thing front to back, or just kind of, go. But that all takes time, so we're all working on it. For now, we're just doing this in the meantime, just to kind of, get some training out there, something that people can refer to. So yeah, do let us know. Thank you very much for attending. Please enjoy the rest of your day, and happy 2018. Bye-bye.